powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you today by our friends at the Gallery Bar, Book, and Games at Ocean Casino Resort. All football season long and the playoffs. We're live on Mondays. Cheers your favorite drinks while cheering on your favorite team. Go to the Gallery at Ocean Casino Resort and go for the win. For more info, visit theoceanac.com. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Adam Caplan is here. We'll take a look back at that Eagles game. What takeaways, if any, can we take from the Giant game? Any concerns about the injuries moving forward? Any good news about the injuries moving forward? And, of course, we got to get into the assistant coaches that have interview requests all over the league. Let's bring in Adam Caplan from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast as he joins us for another edition of Football at 4. Adam, welcome.
Mike, good to be back. Yeah, in our open there for our weekly segments, you hear Jeffrey Lurie talking about our personnel department and putting together world-class roster and all that. I was just literally within the last hour, I talked to an NFL assistant coach whose team is in the playoffs, and he knows I live here and he knows I cover the team locally in addition to 31 other teams, but he knows I have an expertise in the Eagles, and he goes, "Man, you're so lucky to be covering a team that's 14-3. Do you know how hard that is?" So I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" He goes, "Do you know how hard it is to even get 10 wins in our business?" I'm like, so he went through sort of the challenges. You just mentioned the injury situation that the Eagles have, and all the challenges that teams have, the ups and the downs, personnel problems. The Eagles have maybe not the NFL's best roster, top 3. Coaching has been great. Front office, Howie Roseman's had a tremendous year. I think we need to take appreciation of that as much as we might criticize, oh, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? It's hard. It's just hard to win, and you just can't snap your finger. So I want to give the Eagles some credit here as much as on our platforms on Inside the Birds, all of us, Q&A and myself and Mosher, there's some stuff we don't like. The fact that matters that this team is 14-3. It's just remarkable. And they're a little bit better than I expected. I will tell you that. They're a little bit better than that. Yeah,
well, let's take away some things from the game. And you talk about, what we saw from Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, and the offensive game plan. Jalen Hurts back. What did we see? What are some of the takeaways from the offense?
Yeah, so Mike, coming into this, we really didn't know what their approach would be because we knew what the injury was. Pretty much, I think we've had this detail now for 3 weeks, and we told our listeners on the second week that Hurts didn't look good for him to play, that he didn't play. This would be the week, this past week, for him to start throwing hard on Thursday. He did. And he came out and played, but we didn't know what their plan would be on offense in terms of running the football. There's just no way to know that. And it's very clear to me they were not going to let him run. In fact, he did something I've never seen him do. It was, third and 1 or 3rd and 2 in the first quarter. He just went and dove and made sure he didn't get hit, which I'm sure the coaches told him to avoid contact as much as possible. And I think that's Mike, one of my big takeaways was, I think it's probably the biggest one, and hopefully this won't be the case in 2 weeks. They simply cannot run their offense the way they want to without Hurts being a factor in the run game. They just can't be you just can't have that. So they got to get his shoulder right. I understand. He wasn't close to 100%. That was obviously clear. Sirianni made a point of saying that in the post-game press conference. Boy, that surprised me. He was so open about that. And by the way, that was done on purpose. He wanted people to understand what was going on with Hurts' shoulder. And by the way, that's the way that they coached him. So that'd be my first takeaway. The way that Hurts was used, the way that he played. He didn't play badly. He just wasn't. He clearly wasn't himself. The timing was off a little bit. Nothing alarming, but overall, the shoulder's a problem. Now, again, the hope that, and by the way, this last Sunday, that was exactly to the day 3 weeks since he suffered the injury.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's not close to 100%, and Nick Sirianni said it on Sunday that he's still hurting bad. I mean, should we be concerned about hearing that? I mean, this is a 2 to 3 week injury or so. Mm. He's going to have 5 weeks. He's going to have 2 more weeks to sit this one out. What do we take after the way he felt after that game? Should we be worried that there's some lingering here?
Yeah, based on our information, it's definitely not 2 to 3 weeks. You could play in 3 weeks, but you're not going to be he is what we were told is a moderate shoulder sprain. Mosher had the note that there was an issue with the collarbone. That adds to it. For a sprained shoulder completely healed, it's 4 to 6 weeks. But you can play on it within 3 weeks. It doesn't mean it's going to be close to 100%. It's not. I did find it interesting to say how Sirianni said he was hurting. Boy, that floored me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was done on purpose to protect Hurts from criticism, and Sirianni does that a lot for his players. I do admire that. But this is a concern. Now again, we get 2 weeks away from here. And then here's the other thing: is we have no idea what day that'll be, Saturday or Sunday. We won't know that because it's not the championship game. It's the second round. It's the divisional round. We don't know what day that would be. So, no, in 5 weeks we'll be completely healed. I don't know that, but we'll be closer to 100%. Yes, I give Hurts credit for playing through it, but they cannot play that way. The bottom line is, Mike, to move this along here, there's no way they could win like that in the championship game, or even the second in that divisional round game, whoever that would be. They're just not going to be able to win with them playing that way because the competition can be certainly better.
Jalen Hurts, by the way, 9 carries, 13 yards. So obviously you see just 1.9 yards a carry. He was really just keeping it safe. But overall, the team ran the ball 34 times for 135 yards. That's 4 yards a carry. Boston Scott led the way with 54 yards. What do you make of the run game? And it looked like Sanders kind of got pulled out of that game late. And I think we might have lost Adam for a second there. Let's see if we can bring him back in here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN, because I think the run game – oh, we got you there, Adam. He is kind of coming back around here. I see him reloading into the video screen here on the Sports Bash. All right, I think we got him back. There we go. All right, Adam. Run game. Miles Sanders looked like he got pulled out late in that game. They had 34 carries, 135 yards. 9 for 13 came from Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts is part of that, Mike, and the 9 carries is the kneel down, so those count, unfortunately.
Yep.
So he really didn't run the ball at all. I mean, he just did. In fact, I'd have to ask if any were designed. That's obviously not what the Eagles want. He is so dynamic with the football in his hands as a dual-threat quarterback. The offense starts with him. There's no doubt. I was impressed with Gainwell and Scott. In fact, a friend of mine who's a season ticket holder goes, "Why the hell don't they give Scott the ball more?" And I'm like, I'm not a beat reporter, but and I know it's the Giants where Scott has 10 touchdowns now, and it's ridiculous. Not nine rushing, 1 receiving, but he looks good. He's also a good kickoff returner, certainly. I don't know. I can't answer that. But by the way, Miles Sanders' knee is bad in terms of it's not right. That left knee, which we noted 2 weeks ago, he's wearing a brace. They pulled him out, as you know. I don't think they didn't pull him out because the game was in hand. It wasn't in hand. They pulled him out because the knee's not right. So I have no idea what exactly the left knee injury is, Mike. I don't know if it's a sprained knee, bruised knee, whatever it is. It's an issue. You don't do that with your starting running back. So that I always say this: coaches tell you without saying what exactly the problem is. When you pull your running back when the game's not over, they're telling you what you need to know.
So,
right.
Is the run game, how important is Sanders to the run game? In other words, can you plug Boston Scott in there and Gainwell and get similar production, or is
No.
Sanders that important?
Great question, Mike. It's something we have to take a look at. Sanders, when his knee is right, and hopefully in 2 weeks, as we learn more about it, he's dynamic. There's no question. He had a breakout season. He's always been talented. He's had a good season. Look, well over 1,000 yards. It's a shame that this happened. It's not a question of him playing. It's just I don't know that he could be 100%. We don't know exactly what the left knee injury is. That's the problem. We know about every other injury. This is the one where we're not sure what it is. We do know he's been wearing a sleeve. He wore it in practice. The week after, he actually wore a knee brace, and he wore it in the game, and he was seen in the locker room, by the way, I'm told, wearing it. So they have to get through it, and we'll see.
How about Hurts? Let's kind of dig a little deeper. Concerns about his injury going forward here. We kind of talked about the timeline here, but should we have any more concerns that will limit him in this game 2 weeks from now?
What I found interesting, Sirianni talked today. I don't have the transcript yet because they just had it in the last hour, but he seemed to indicate that they didn't think he could hurt the shoulder more, which I like. That was good. That was a good note. And that's why they played him, because if they thought he could injure more, he wasn't going to play. They can't take that chance. So you give him 2 more weeks, 5 weeks on a sprain and a grade 1+, I believe it is, on a shoulder. He should. Again, it's not going to be 100%, but it should be fairly close. I just don't think there's any way that they won't get back to what they do best with him, is him being a dual threat. He is so dynamic. They have to do it. They just have to do it.
Talking with Adam Caplan, Football at 4 here. Josh Sweat, another injured Eagle here, did not play last week, but how about 2 weeks from now? What's the news on him?
Yeah, so a couple things. We had a note. Our first show was after he got hurt in that first quarter of the game 2 weeks ago. We had a note on our Wednesday show. What we're hearing is he's in play to be available for the first playoff game, whenever that is. And Sirianni had a funny note today, and I obviously they were not going to let him play because he has his neck injury. See, he said Sweat was pushing to play. So, you understand the importance of the game against the Giants to clinch. So I would be very surprised if he's not practicing when they come back from the bye. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think they're going to work later this week. I'm not saying he's going to be on the field, but from what we understand, what we're told, and nothing that's happened since then, he should be pretty close to playing in the first postseason game.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to get there first. So I think, and I want to get to Gardner Johnson also before we turn our attention to something else. But everything we're hearing on Josh Sweat is good, and boy, they certainly could use him. And they didn't really they had 2 sacks in that game, but none of them were like really. They had nothing to do with pass rush, unfortunately.
All right, well, let's get into Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, because I don't think his snap counts were, limited at all. He was out there, and how did they use him?
My God, this surprised me. We were thinking maybe like 60% of the snaps. He's at 100%, 100%. Now, we talked about on our show, one of our shows last week, that what will probably happen, because they don't want to completely make him a nickel, is that maybe they start him off at safety and have him move inside a nickel. That's exactly what they did. I don't have the exact snap count in how much in base on first and second and then a nickel, or even when they went second and long, did they put him in nickel? I don't know that, or slot. I don't have that number, but his role was absolutely clear. No doubt about this one. He was a safety in non-passing situations, and he played slot in passing situations. That's okay. Look, they didn't get any interceptions. In fact, I don't think they forced a turnover, but I would tell you this. One person told me that they counted 4 plays that should have
they dropped about 5.
Yeah. Right. Well, one person who I trust told me he counted 4. Well, that should have been picked. No question about it. Epps, right in his hands. Slay took a wrong angle with his hands. That should have been a pick. So, okay. But I want to see Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Mike, be dynamic. If I remember this, I saw this earlier this week, and correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't he still tied for interceptions for the season?
Yes.
For number one?
Yeah, we asked the question earlier, Adam. What does C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Dak Prescott have in common?
What do they have in common? They're still tied for turnovers?
They both lead the league in interceptions after missing 5 games.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, is that right?
Yes.
That's incredible. See, my one issue, which we talked about on Inside the Birds last week, if they did what they would wind up doing, you're taking them away from being dynamic, of playing the slot, because you're playing the player. You're not playing he's a center fielder when he plays safety. There's really, I have to ask around, but I don't know if there's a safety who attacks the football like he does. It's just he has a knack for it. And Greg Cosell told us on our pregame show that he was one of the best slot corners in the NFL last season. So it's a dilemma, but I would think they're going to keep it the same. Much to my chagrin, I don't see them changing it, because they feel like they don't want Josiah Scott in the field. By the way, Josiah Scott did not play 1 snap on defense.
Wow, I did not realize that. That's pretty telling there. All right, let's get into potentially big news here. Losing John Gannon, Shane Steichen. Now, if you follow social media, the fans will drive these 2 gentlemen to the airport, but it's not that simple.
Is that right?
Oh, my God, it's unbelievable, especially Gannon. Yeah. Gannon more than Steichen. I think he's more hated than Steichen is, but talk about the possibilities of these 2 guys possibly not being back and what that could create. Because Sirianni did address it today, and he said, look, we have guys in-house and possibly outside, so obviously we're always prepared, but to lose both coordinators would be a big deal. I think we lost Adam there. Yep. Is he in? There he goes. There we go. So losing both these coordinators could be a big deal.
Yeah. So they're in-house candidates, Mike. Denard Wilson, defensive backs, certainly would be sort of a guy they would talk to or look at in-house. This is a specific scheme. I don't see them changing it because it works. So many of the numbers are great from a analytics and data standpoint. The one issue we've had with Gannon since he's been here, way more last year, is the amount of free access the posting receivers get. That's been back. It's all backed by tape study. It can't really be challenged. It's all the truth. That's the one area you worry about. The deeper they get to better passing games, but that's it. That's the only thing that I'd like to see a little bit more blitzing, but you're not going to get everything. The scheme does not feature a lot of blitzing. Vic Fangio just never was a big blitzer. He's somewhere in the middle, the middle or the lower half. So I understand that, but Shane Steichen, remember now, Sirianni could take the play calling back if he wanted to. He could give it to Brian Johnson, quarterback coach. He called plays at the University of Florida. They'll have a list of guys outside the building. Sirianni is very resourceful. He knows a lot of coaches. We'll talk more. If this happens, we'll have the names. There are 3 or 4 names I kind of have an idea of that he's talked to before. He knows, but it won't matter unless Steichen leaves. Gannon, look, it's a specific scheme, so they've had so much success with it. I just don't see them changing it.
Right. I think that's key to kind of stress to the listeners, Adam, is that you might not like Gannon, but if he goes, they're going to find another guy that runs that defense.
Yeah, and that's why Fangio's been here. We put this on our show Sunday that he's in the building every 3 or 4 weeks, so he's definitely I think it's out there. Someone put it out there. Was it Bleeding Green Nation? So one of the Eagles blogs put it out a couple months ago. So certainly want to give him credit, and it's our understanding he's there. Fangio, every so often. So yeah, I would be floored if they changed it. They gave in to running it's really a 34 front with 2 overhangs. So the way the league sees it, if you talk to personnel people, they see it as a 3-4. Other people see it as a 5-2. It's still an odd front. So that's what they run. And by the way, that's why Jordan Davis is here. I don't see them changing that.
Right. Which of the 2 do you think is more likely to get hired?
Gannon. Yeah, Gannon.
Really?
Gannon. Shane Steichen is an outstanding play caller. There's no doubt. Now, obviously, he has great players, so that helps. But Gannon is a guy who was the runner-up for the Texans job. They want to talk to him again. Now, if you're Jonathan Gannon, because you got a little bit more leverage, you good because they're a complete rebuild. They're 3 years away from being like 2 years away. I mean, that's just they have the NFL's worst roster. So, do you really want that job? He has to answer that question. Only he can. And Shane Steichen is a guy who's coached quarterbacks, which is important. He's shown to be an excellent play caller. But I think Gannon's a little bit farther ahead, but we'll see it. Here's one thing I know about.
Steichen's got 3 requests right now. Steichen's got 3 requests right now.
I know, but that doesn't mean he gets a job.
Right.
This is what I'm getting to, Mike. It all depends. It doesn't matter if you have 17. It's irrelevant. It's how you interview. It's how you come across. You could have one interview, get a job. It's 100%. Nothing else matters. What's your list of coaches you're hiring, and how do you come off? If you don't come off, well, you don't get the job. I'll give you a little nugget. Jim Harbaugh had a terrible interview with the Niners in 2012. It was so bad, they're like, he can't be this bad. So they brought him back, and he got the job. It's all how you present yourself. If you don't present yourself well, you're not getting the job.
All right. Shane Steichen, by the way, Colts, Texans, and Panthers have requested to talk to him, and it looks like the Texans would like to meet with John Gannon again.
By the way, more will get Gannon. I know 2 teams are looking at him. I would expect him to get more, but if you're Gannon, why would you take that Texans job? And by the way, the Broncos job, you got to want to coach Russell Wilson. I'm going to leave it at that. And I talked to a head coach. At least I don't know if he'll get an interview this year. I talked to a head coaching candidate who should get a look in the next 2 years. He said he would call Nate Hackett first. He goes, if I'm going to coach that team, I got to talk to the guy coaching him because people want to know what the hell's happened to Russell Wilson.
Well, I'll tell you this. He didn't look as bad when Hackett left.
Yeah, he looked better. I'll tell you, this past week he looked better, but what happened for 14 weeks?
I don't know.
You got to figure that out.
That's what I said. It was Hackett that bad that him leaving and all of a sudden Wilson just all of a sudden was competent again. I mean, my God.
Yeah, I hear you, Mike, but there's you just and by the way, he gave up the play calling very early in the season, so you got to know that when you take it, like it's like coaching Carson Wentz. You got to know, like, if you're going to coach him, you got to figure what the hell's happened to him. Like, you have to know that before you want to coach him, because You have to want to coach these quarterbacks who are struggling. Because you know what? They could bring you down. You could get fired if these guys don't play well.
All right, Adam Caplan. We'll look at the matchup possibilities. The wild card weekend is all right here on 97.3 ESPN Football at 4. Back tomorrow with Jeff Mosher, Andrew on Thursday, and Adam's back on Friday. Thanks, pal.
All right, Matt. Later.